There's nothing like snook hook sets at dawn or catching a tarpon in the moonlight. Find your next fishing trip made easy on fishingbooker.com and experience the magic of the Sunshine State or any other destination on your fishing bucket list. Book a blue water adventure in search of sailfish or go snapper fishing with the kids. With over 6,000 captains and trips to choose from, planning your next one just got a whole lot easier. Download the Fishing Booker app on the Google Play or App Store, or visit them online at fishingbooker.com to book your trip today. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, your home for deer hunting news, stories, and strategies. And now, your host, Mark Kenyon.
Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Mark Kenyon. This is episode number 184, and today in the show we are back with a new Rut Radio episode in which we are checking with hunters from across the country to get the latest on the progress of the whitetail rut, current deer behavior, and the tactics that are working right this very minute. And today we've got updates from states like Michigan, Vermont, Iowa, Kentucky, and more. Welcome to the Wired to Hunt podcast, brought to you by Sitka Gear, and we are back today with another Rut Radio episode. And each week with our Rut Radio episodes, we are checking in with a handful of hunters from across the country to get updates on what's happening right now with the whitetail rut, with whitetail behavior, with conditions that are impacting deer, all that kind of good stuff. And then we also talk about what we should be doing as hunters to be trying to fill those tags, obviously. So that's what we have in slate for today's episode. And with me to do that is Spencer Newharth. Spencer, how are you?
I am good. South Dakota has had some rifle seasons open up now, and so I am off the sidelines finally, and I am back to hunting, so I am as excited as anybody for mid-November to get here.
Yeah, so you killed a buck in October, then you dropped off the map in South Dakota. You didn't hunt there for a while. You finally came back with this rifle season, and you wasted no time filling your tag, huh?
That's right. Our West River season opened on last Saturday, and I was tagged out about 45 minutes into the season. So that was a public land hunt. Went in pretty far, set up, and found the does, and then found the buck that I was after. So it was another quick hunt, but luckily we have another season that opens up here on this coming Saturday, so I'll be back at it again.
I'll tell you what, I think I need to learn something from you, because I've hunted like 23 out of the last 24 days, and like 15 of those have been all-day sits, and I haven't killed a damn thing. So,
well, let's talk about that a little bit, Mark. Like, nobody has hunted as hard as you here since we've hit November. How do you think the rut has played out, as far as, do you think you've witnessed the different phases as most people describe them, from the seeking and chasing to all the way up to now, which might be lockdown? Do you feel like you've seen everything that most hunters expect to see come the rut?
Yeah, I've seen a pretty good swath of it. As far as what I've seen here in Michigan, where I've spent 97% of my hunting time this year during the rut, which is different than usual. Usually I'm hunting a lot of places out of state, but as you know, have been so focused on Holyfield here that have kind of put all my, what's the saying? You put all your, put all the somethings in a... I put all my eggs in one. I can hardly function right now, Spencer. I'm running on a collective like 10 hours of sleep over the last 2 weeks. So to be honest, I'm not 100% with it anymore. So what I'm trying to say is here in Michigan, I started seeing like that good chasing happening right around, early November, right around like the 1st, October 31st, November 1st, it started kind of kicking into gear. Started seeing the mature bucks, relatively mature buck. There's one 3.5-year-old buck in this little area I'm hunting, and then there's the 5.5-year-old, this Holyfield buck. Started seeing them moving around, chasing a lot, and that's been pretty consistent all the way up until today. Have been seeing some chasing, but definitely the last like 3-4 days it has slowed down, and I've been seeing maybe that lockdown type thing going on, where there's been long periods of absolutely nothing going on, and then every once in a while you'll see one buck that's off cruising still, checking out, trying to find another doe. But definitely not quite as intense as it was maybe from like the 2nd through the 9th or 10th. But I'm sure there's still action to be had. And I spent a couple days in Ohio, November, I don't know what it was, 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th. And there was a little bit of cruising going on. Didn't see any chasing at all, but did see I saw one buck, I think. But between me and Josh, we saw a couple bucks that were cruising. And that's kind of the extent of it.
Yeah, well, that lockdown, like you talked about, that seems to be part of a theme in this week's episode. But I think we as hunters often have a problem where we kind of want to drop these dates in a box and say, okay, this is seeking and chasing, this is pre-rut, this is lockdown, stuff like that. And that's just probably the wrong way to look at it. All these things kind of bleed into each other, and although we might be in, lockdown right now, this is probably still a great time to find a buck on its feet, and it's still better hunting, than it was 3 weeks ago. And so mid-November can be tough, but, as a hunter still looking for a mature buck, you probably shouldn't be too discouraged at this point.
Oh yeah, that's a great point, because and to your point, that this quote unquote lockdown type period, it's very subjective, and it can be very much here and not there. So if you're sitting on this corner of a 100-acre property, you might be all sorts of chasing and crazy stuff going on, while 500 yards the other direction it might be just completely dead, and that could be the case on November 1st just as much as it could be on November 15th. So yeah, to your point, don't be discouraged. If you can be out there in the woods, you should. Good things can happen. It's still November, so that's I'm excited to hear what everyone else has to say, because I'm sure that there's been some good action happening, and even though this quote unquote lockdown might be sort of what most people expect during mid-November, I certainly still have high hopes.
And for this week's episode, we start Iowa and talk to Jeff Lindsay from the Lindsay Way. Then we go to Vermont and talk to Tim Biebel from the4pointer.com. Then we talk to Jeff Danker from Buck Ventures in Kentucky. Then we go to Idaho, and with Bone Maniacs, we talk to Shane Mowry.
Sounds like a great group of hunters to chat with. Anything that we need to know before we dive right into those interviews?
I don't think so. Hopefully, when I talk to you next week, Mark, you have some good news on Holyfield.
Thank you. Hopefully I will too. We've been saying this for like 10 weeks now or something, so hopefully we just don't even need to say that ever again, for good reasons, and I will do my best to make it happen.
That's right. Until then, Mark, fear no evil and booyah.
Yep, we won't even go there, but for all those who know what he's talking about, I'll talk to you later, Spencer.
All right, bye. Before we get to our first update, though, let's pause to thank our sponsors at Sitka Gear. And for this week's Sitka story, we're joined by Jake Terry, who tells us about a rut hunt that turned on a dime.
My story starts mid-November in Kansas. Saw it was going to be a cold front, lows in the 40s for highs. Made the drive to hunt public land. Sat all morning without seeing a deer. Wanted to get down several times, but knew that this was the time of year and the temperature that a big buck was going to be on its feet eventually. At 12:30, I see my first buck cruising across a CRP field. After a sequence of grunting to try to get the buck to turn my way, finally hit a snort wheeze, and he heads directly to my tree. Kill him at 20 yards, and it ends up being one of the biggest bucks I've ever taken with a bow, and it was on public land. So, very happy with that. Would have been all day sit, but I was prepared to sit all day. and didn't see a deer till 12:30.
On Jake's hunt, he was wearing Sitka's Phonetic system. If you'd like to create a Sitka story of your own, or to learn more about Sitka's technical hunting apparel, visit sitkagear.com. All right, and joining us on the line first is Jeff Lindsay out of Iowa with the Lindsay Way. Now, Jeff, in Iowa, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'd say we're probably around an 8. Kind of been I don't want to say a trickle rut because it seems like every year is a trickle rut, but it was really good late October, and then the last couple of, shut down with the moon, and then now it appears to be going back pretty good. My dad actually shot a buck this morning. We've seen a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old cruising this morning, but just based on the cameras and the daylight activity, it's as good the last 2 or 3 days as I've seen all year. It's still not what I would call, wide open, crazy rut, but it's as good as yet.
So what are your favorite techniques for killing a buck right now as far as hunting in the morning or evening or on food sources, bedding? What are you doing there in Iowa?
Well, right now it's, kind of like the lockdown. Bucks are coming on and off does, in my opinion, and it can be deadly hunting food late afternoon. It seems like in this colder weather, the deer are on the grains, they're on the beans, they're on the cut corn, and I like the last couple of hours, on a food plot, just in case a doe comes in, last 2 or 3 hours, I should say, in case a doe comes in and maybe she's dragging a buck that, he's trying to wait till the time is right for her, he's tending her or whatever. But in my opinion, as far as, just killing a deer right now, it's all about seat time. You just got to, if it's daylight to dark, if you can pull an all dayer, it's mentally, physically taxing, but if you can do it, do it. But, just based on what I'm seeing on my cameras, 11 to 2, 2:30, somewhere in there is the number one time for buck activity movement.
With this time of year being some of the best hunting all fall, do you think that moon phases or weather fronts play a role in deer activity?
It seems like every year I know less and less about the moon because you hear all this stuff, the red moon, the rising moon, the full moon, and all that. My opinion is, the rut and does and heat and weather always trumps the moon. But going back into the last 2 weeks, what everybody said was the prime moon, that late October moon, there was a lot of giant deer killed. The full moon, it was terrible. I mean, not a whole lot of activity, daylight activity at all. And if you look back, this is the first time in our experience that, you can look back for 2 weeks and the weather's been pretty consistent. Usually it's going to get real hot or it's going to get real cold. We've had a couple days where it got real cold, but looking back the last 2.5 weeks, it's been fairly consistent weather. So this year, the way everything's lined up with the moon, it's made a little more sense. The full moon was terrible. The red moon, the rising moon right before the red moon was good. And so it's a little, like I say, it's a little more predictable, or you can monitor the moon when the weather's consistent. But if you're just getting cold front and getting hot and cold front getting hot, you're always going to see a lot more activity on those cold fronts.
What are your thoughts on some more aggressive tactics right now, like calling or decoying?
Decoying right now, you just got to catch that buck in the right mood. The deer I shot Sunday afternoon was actually eating, and the other 2 big 4 and 5-year-olds that I seen were eating. So, I don't think, if I think about it, I had a decoy out then, I think it would have blew my hunt. But mornings for decoys right now, I think is pretty good. Rattling in the morning's good. I rattled in a buck this morning. But besides that, I hadn't had a whole lot of luck rattling this rut. I don't know what that can really be attributed to. And I rattle a fair amount, probably, not as much as some people, but I think I bang the horns a lot. But, as far as aggressive right now, I just, seat time. I know I can't preach that enough. Just be in the stand. He's going to be walking. You're going to have some daylight walkers. Be in the stand, funnels in between bedding areas, pinch points, anywhere it's going to force a deer to go.
And your trail cameras right now, Jeff, are they giving you any good intel, or is that something that you don't focus on too much this time of year?
No, we're focusing on it a lot. We got cameras running on scrapes, and then I got cameras on smaller food plots where I'm hoping to catch a doe, that'll have a buck in tow. And then, I've never been a fan of, checking trail cams every day, every other day, but right now I do, because you can go in and you can find a buck alone. He's in between does. You go and just concentrate on that area, or you go in. You got to, we put cameras on time lapses a lot in food plots, and that buck may not walk by that camera, but you may see him. You can zoom in and see he's in that field, and usually if he's in that field, unless he's getting ready to leave that doe, he's going to be with her another day or two. So we check them a lot more than we do any other time of the year. So that's why cellular cameras are really deadly this time of year.
How about going forward then, Jeff, in this next week or so? What do you think that buck activity is going to be in Iowa on a scale of 1 to 10?
I think it's going to start to, as far as cruising bucks, it's going to start slowing down after the 15th or through the 17th, somewhere in there. I like these next couple of days. They're actually some of my favorite. So I think the best is probably, we're in that window right now, that 5 to 7 day window where the real older deer are in the daylight activity the most. So I'd say if it's going to be a 10, if 10 is as good as it can get, it's going to be that the next couple of days. Then after that, you're going to have to start focusing on the food sources and catching these deer, trying to refuel up for the rut.
All right, Jeff, well, I like your optimism, and thanks for joining me. Good luck this year.
Thank you, man. Good luck.
All right, and joining us on the line next is Tim Biebel from the4pointer.com. Now, Tim, in Vermont, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to put it pretty high. I'm going to put it around an 8 or a 9. I've seen more scrapes lately than I've seen in many prior years, and what I witnessed on Saturday was certainly good, solid chasing activity from the deer I was able to harvest.
Well, Tim, you just brought up scrapes there. Do you think those are active scrapes, or are you just saying that this has been maybe a little more intense rut, that there's a lot heavier deer sign right now in the woods?
Yeah, I think that the scrapes are a little bit old, probably a half a week to a week old, based on what I saw on our opener on Saturday. They just had a few leaves in them, looked a little bit like they've just been hadn't been tended to in a while, and I think that's because the bucks are either just cruising a little bit more or are actually with does and actively pursuing does at the moment.
Well, tell me more about that Saturday hunt that you had, and what was Vermont's gun opener there where you tagged out?
I was fortunate Saturday to take the biggest buck I've ever taken. It was, I'm going to say, part skill, just being in the right place based on the sign that I was seeing. But there was quite a bit of luck involved too. He came through following a doe about a half hour before it got dark. He was just on her tail, and it was one of those cases where I was just in the right place at the right time, and I couldn't be happier with the buck I was able to kill. He was a great, really heavy deer, not much of a rack, but he was 214 pounds dressed, which is a really big deer for around here. So I'm ecstatic, and to see that kind of buck activity too is just fun. And so it's a hunt I'll never forget. I'm sure it was great to have my dad there with me, and like I said, it's something I'll never forget.
It sounds like you had a great opener there, Tim. How about friends in the area? What are they reporting for buck activity?
I'm hearing more of the same. A couple of friends were fortunate enough to tag out as well. I mean, success rates aren't high around here, but I certainly have heard of quite a few folks that have had good luck out there this past weekend, and just some beauties being taken for this area. Vermont's not known for really massive racks. That's just not what's growing around here. But a couple really, really almost non-existent winners back to back has contributed to some great antler growth, I would think. Instead of the deer just trying to survive the winter, they were able to put some of that energy into growing decent set of antlers, and just some great pictures. It got people really excited around here. It's great.
So hunters who are having success in Vermont, what do you think their strategy has been? Are they looking for old buck sign and focusing on that? Are they looking for doe bedding? What do their techniques look like?
A lot of it around here, especially on the opener, is pressure related. There's a lot of people that hit the woods on the first weekend. So a lot of the friends that I know that had bucks come by them were more a result of hunter pressure, I would say. But others, same thing. They were just in feed sources, or they had those, bring a buck by. I wouldn't say it's nothing out of the ordinary. I would say to a hunter that hasn't filled the tag yet, if wondered for that piece of advice. To me, it was just I just I spent the whole morning looking for the best sign I could find, and then I parked my keister right where I found the best sign and hoped that a doe would bring a buck through, and that's what happened. I think right now, if you can find the does, eventually a buck's going to come through.
Going forward then in this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Vermont?
I think the chasing is going to continue. We typically see bulk of the breeding take place in Vermont towards the end of November, not this week, but the next week, right around Thanksgiving. So I really think that the bucks are still going to be chasing for the next week. So if somebody can find where the does are and just wait them out, I think that's key. So I would put it at the same rating I gave for what I saw last weekend. I think it's going to be up in the 7, 8, 9 area for buck movement, just chasing does and trying to find them.
All right, Tim. Well, congrats on that great opener, and thanks for joining me.
All right, thanks a lot.
Before we get to our next caller, though, let's pause to thank our sponsors at Whitetail Properties. And this week with Whitetail Properties, we are joined by Dave Skinner, a land specialist out of Kentucky. And Dave is going to be telling us about what to look for when trying to make a property more affordable.
There's several things. One of the big one is I'm going to look for something that's not producing income. If I'm looking to get the per acre price down, I'm going to avoid things like tillable ground, because that drives the price up. Anytime something produces an income, it's going to drive the price up. Also, marketable timber. You've got to pay for that. Gone are the days that you can buy a piece of property, cut the timber off of it, and walk away with the land and some cash. It just doesn't happen anymore. In Kentucky, we've got areas that have been strip mined for coal. So that reclaimed coal ground frequently can sell, literally half of what similar acreage would sell for in the area. So reclaimed ground is a great way to get ground down around $1,000 an acre. The habitat on that stuff is phenomenal. And like I said, it's quite a bit cheaper than other stuff in the area. Also, maybe someone has severed the mineral rights in the past. Sometimes that can get the price per acre down. Conservation easements, lack of road frontage, all those things will drive the price of acreage down. So, to save on the front end, that's the way you do it.
If you'd like to learn more and to see the properties that Dave currently has listed for sale, visit whitetailproperties.com/Skinner. That's SKINNER. All right, and joining me on the line next is the host of Buck Ventures, Jeff Danker. Now, Jeff, in Kentucky, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, man, I would say lately a 1 to 10, mature bucks is about a 2. I've been in Kentucky for the last 3 days, setting all-day sets, and I've not seen anything older than a 3-year-old.
So it being a 2, that seems pretty low for mid-November.
Mm-hmm.
You must think that they're in lockdown right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hunting a really good farm that we're managing, and we got some cornfields and lots of hardwoods, and I think they're just locked down. The dates line up with it, and I would bet 95% they're locked down.
And so what is your strategy then during this stage of the rut?
My strategy with the lockdown always is just to recognize it, know what you're dealing with, but then just and try to stay focused, because so many times you, as a hunter, if you lose that focus and you lose a detail, then you'll get that chance to not be ready for it. So what I'm doing is I'm just waiting it out. So I'm still hunting the does. That's what we're supposed to do this time. You're playing good winds, but I'm setting all day. I'm staying all day. And a lot of times them big deer, when they break away from them does, will be midday. And you'll catch one of them suckers out, sure enough, looking And then right when that happens, have those horns ready. When you see that big sucker by himself, you can call him in a lot of times.
So will you do any other aggressive tactics as far as decoying or moving into those hardwoods quite yet?
Well, this farm right here is, I ain't saying that's a wrong tactic. On this farm, I got a lot of numbers. And so if you go in too deep, whatever, you're going to run into a lot of deer. You're going to get those in the wrong places, and the gig will be up. So I've been just being careful and just I got a little time. So, weather's not great, but when they break, I'm a firm believer. If you have good access, if you play the wind right and then put your time in setting all day, you will get that opportunity of a big mature deer.
Well, with those deer being in lockdown, do you think there's anything that can change for your favor besides the calendar day? Like if we were to get a weather front or any kind of moon phase right now?
Yeah, I mean, always when it's cold, you're always going to have, I always say this, weather will outdo moon. It will outdo everything. So if you get weather, you get good dates, that's going to help. But at the same time, when them big deer get locked down, they're going to be with that doe 3 or 4 days. So you got to wait it out. And not to say that at any time it could happen, one could break loose, but we got good hunting in the days ahead. The guys just got to get through this lockdown and like I said, keep your wits about you because it'll drive you crazy this time of year.
Do you think the sign making has gone cold then as far as rubs and scrapes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some frustration with some rubs on some bucks and stuff, but as far as setting over a scrape thinking there's going to be a big deer come in and freshen it up, you're probably wasting your time right now.
All right, Jeff, with it being locked down, it sounds like pretty tough hunting right now, but do you think there's anything that can be done from a hunter's perspective if you find some deer that are locked down right now?
Well, I mean, the one thing as a bow hunter, when you see them, don't be scared to do a spot and stock on a whitetail. I know that's not a typical type deal, but when you get that buck locked down, all you have to do is make sure that you don't spook that doe. You can literally walk up and that buck can be watching you. If you don't spook that doe, you can walk up there and shoot him. So, I mean, that's something to look out for, and just don't be scared to try that because it's worked many times for hunters.
Going forward then in this next week or so, what do you think that buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10 in Kentucky?
Well, I think I would say it would be, I would want to say a 7 or 8, and I would say that if we were going to get cold weather, but we're not. So I'm going to stick to probably around the 5. I mean, I think there'll be times of a 6, maybe some cooler type mornings, but we're going to have some cloud cover, we're going to hold in heat, and, so I'm going to stick with that. And again, I can't stress enough to all the hunters out there, they need to be setting all day because you never know when that good activity is going to happen.
All right, Jeff. Well, I hope you get that cold snap, and good luck going forward. Thanks for joining me.
All right, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
All right, and joining us on the line last is Shane Mowry in Idaho, the founder of Bone Maniacs. Now, Shane, in Idaho, what would you say the buck activity has been lately on a scale of 1 to 10?
I'm going to have to go with 5 on this one. Yeah, 5 meaning that you get several different topographies in Idaho, in the unit wise as well. And from what I know in the units, Dave, for instance, the ones that I'm real familiar with, Unit 39, 33, 36, 64, 65, and then the upper portion of the panhandle of Idaho, which of all the units that I typically hunt, for whitetail. It's been hot or cold. Take for instance, we'll just start with the panhandle, and maybe it has something to do with the weather because you have different resources. Everybody's got their opinions. I'm usually trying to go by what I see when I'm hunting, and put things together on what I need to do to punch that tag, as they say. Up in the panhandle, a lot of the weathers came in pretty quick, pretty much how it did last year. I think the rut activity is just getting started up there, from the signs we're seeing. Take for instance the glands on the bucks that we're seeing on video.
they're still dry. Over in 64 and 65, we're starting to see a little bit of pushing from the immature bucks. And, I would say any day now that things are going to get really turned on over there. Up in the 33 unit around Crouch, you get into that area. I would say you're probably more along the lines of, activity is at its peak, as far as that's concerned. So.
Well, Shane, I know you hunt a lot of the Midwest as well. How would you say mid-November is different in Idaho versus someplace like Ohio or Indiana, and how do your tactics differ?
Sure. As far as hunting the Midwest and then hunting Idaho as well, there's a lot of, I think, things that come into play as far as the rut is concerned. For one, the extreme temperatures that you're going to have from, the Midwest to Idaho is, take for instance, I just came into Indiana, and the temperatures have been relatively warm, and the movement of deer in general has been really down. And the agriculture, a lot of they had a wet season, and the corn it was still standing on pretty much adjacent farms that I was hunting. That has just went down, so I'm seeing more deer activity in the past 2 days. As far as Idaho, as far as the ag is concerned, there's not really a lot that's, that they're going to be, as far as movement is concerned. And, when that, is a key factor for, hunting tactics, pinch points and things like that, as far as, where you're going to set up stands, if you're a stand hunter. Tactics as far as, I know a lot of Western guys spot and stalk, the whitetail and muley. But as far as, spot and stalk deciduous forest in the Midwest on these little pocket draws and deep ravines that's holding good oaks, there's a lot of leaves. It's nearly 99.9% impossible for you to do any type of tactics for that. But it's pretty much putting up on good trails and hoping for the best. Trail cameras and doing a lot of, if it is in rut or pre-rut, pretty much you're going to have to study, a lot of the deer movement. If you do see a buck in, try to get a good glance of, what his glands are looking like. If they're not black, then obviously an immature buck is going to be starting to rut a lot earlier than what a good mature buck is going to be on his feet. Typically, he's going to be pretty much a nocturnal animal until those does are really in full swing estrus, and there's no reason for him, to be on his feet. He's pretty much going to let those immature bucks do all the work for him.
Well, going forward then in this next week or so in Idaho, what do you think the buck activity is going to be on a scale of 1 to 10?
I would say it's probably going to be picking up. I would probably have to guess it's going to be somewhere right around an 8 or 9. As far as that's concerned, a lot of the intel that we've gathered, it should be a much better week. One of our staff actually is over in 64 and 65 right now, and he's giving me some really good reports that, and I'm really pulling for him. So he's got his eyes on a good buck that they've been keeping track of, but they haven't been able to locate him here, just because mainly, as far as the open country that they're dealing with, there is some ag there that they're hunting on, but they're going to be ground hunters as far as the muzzleloader tag. So I'm really thinking that he should be in full swing of rut over there.
Well, thanks for joining me, Shane, and good luck to you and the rest of the Bone Maniacs team.
You betcha. Thanks, Spencer.
And that concludes this week's episode of Wired to Hunt's Rut Radio. We'd like to thank our sponsors at Sitka, Whitetail Properties, Whitetail Institute, Huntera, Matthews, Maven, Yeti, and Trophy Ridge. And we thank you guys for listening. Mid-November is a really exciting time, as a lot of states have their gun season starting to open, as well as South Dakota, and I have another rifle opener coming up here on Saturday. So if you'd like to follow along with my hunts, you can check me out on Instagram at Spencer Newharth, where you'll also see that muley that I just harvested in South Dakota. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys next week, and as always, stay wired to hunt.
I'm sure a lot of you guys remember the old ceremonial hunting tradition of eating the heart out of the first animal you kill. Meat from those organs are among the most nutrient-rich foods on the planet. You can get those same benefits your ancestors craved via convenient daily capsules from Heart and Soil. Find out more at heartandsoil.co. And remember, use code MeatEater for 10% off your purchase. You ever get that feeling the walls closing in, the concrete jungle suffocating you? You crave some wide open spaces, the chance to connect with nature, maybe in a spot all your own. Well, head over to land.com. They've got ranches, forests, mountains, streams, you name it. Search by acreage. You can search by location. You can search by the kind of hunting and fishing you're dreaming of. Land.com. It is where the adventure begins.